Margaret was halfway through pouring her morning coffee when her world changed in less than 3 seconds. One moment, everything felt normal. The next, the cup slipped from her hand and shattered across the kitchen floor. Her left arm suddenly felt disconnected from her body, heavy and useless. She opened her mouth to call for her husband, but the words came out twisted and broken, like her brain could no longer organize simple language. Then came the most terrifying part. One side of her face began to droop. She was having a stroke. But what happened next shocked even the emergency room physician later that morning. Before the ambulance ever reached her house, Margaret did something incredibly simple that may have protected her brain from permanent damage. She didn't take a pill. She didn't attempt anything dramatic. She didn't panic. Instead, she changed the position of her body and controlled her breathing in a very specific way. And according to doctors, those first actions may have bought her brain the precious minutes it needed to survive. Here's the reality most people never hear. Every 40 seconds, someone in America suffers a stroke. But the moments that matter most often happen before the hospital, before medication, before paramedics even arrive. Those first few minutes can shape the rest of a person's life. Recovery or disability, independence or permanent damage. And today, you're going to learn exactly what Margaret understood in that critical moment. Because your body has built-in survival mechanisms most people never use. The problem is, almost nobody has ever been taught how to activate them when every second counts. Most people imagine a stroke as something dramatic and immediate, like collapsing to the floor without warning. But that's rarely how it begins. In reality, a stroke often arrives quietly, subtly, almost politely. The brain doesn't always scream for help at first. Sometimes it whispers. Think about your brain like a massive city lit up at night. Every thought, every memory, every movement depends on an uninterrupted flow of energy moving through tiny pathways. Blood carries oxygen through those pathways every second of your life. Now imagine one small route suddenly becoming blocked. A section of the city goes dark, maybe just for a moment, maybe permanently. Sometimes the lights flicker back on before anyone notices. Doctors call this a transient ischemic attack, or TIA. Many people casually refer to it as a mini-stroke, but there is nothing minor about it. A TIA is often the brain's final warning before a major stroke arrives. And this is where countless people make a dangerous mistake. The symptoms appear for a minute, then disappear, so they assume everything is fine. Maybe an arm suddenly feels weak. Maybe words stop coming out correctly in the middle of a sentence. Maybe balance feels strange for 60 seconds and then returns to normal. Most people brush it off. They blame fatigue, dehydration, stress, or simply getting older. But inside the body, something far more serious may already be happening. Blood flow to the brain has been interrupted. A clot may be forming. Oxygen delivery may already be dropping. And once brain cells lose oxygen, the damage begins faster than most people realize. What makes this especially dangerous is that there's often a short window in the earliest moments where the body can still compensate before circulation fully collapses. And understanding that window could make all the difference. The frightening truth is that many stroke symptoms don't look dramatic at all in the beginning. They can feel small, random, even easy to ignore. That's why so many people delay getting help until it's too late. One side of the face may suddenly feel numb. A hand may lose strength for no obvious reason. Vision can become blurry in one eye, then clear again moments later. Sometimes a person suddenly struggles to understand simple words, even though they can hear perfectly. Other times, dizziness appears out of nowhere while sitting completely still. And perhaps the most dangerous part of all is this: the symptoms may vanish almost as quickly as they appeared. When that happens, people relax. They think the danger has passed. But often, the opposite is true. A disappearing symptom can actually mean the clock has started ticking toward something much worse. Many older adults were raised to endure discomfort quietly. They learned not to complain unless absolutely necessary. So when something feels off, they hesitate. They don't want to overreact. They don't want to bother anyone. They wait. And during a stroke, waiting can permanently change a life. The difference between acting immediately and delaying just a few minutes can determine whether brain tissue survives or dies. That's why recognizing the warning signs matters so much. Sudden weakness on one side of the body, facial drooping, slurred or confused speech, sudden loss of balance, a severe headache with no clear cause, vision changes that appear without warning. These are not symptoms to walk off. They are emergency signals from the brain itself. But here's the part most people have never been taught. During those earliest moments, before emergency responders arrive, there may be simple actions that help support circulation to the brain while help is on the way. Not as a cure, not as a replacement for medical care, but as a way to potentially buy the brain valuable time when every second matters most. This brings us to the exact technique Margaret used that morning in her kitchen, the same method that emergency physicians later said may have helped reduce the severity of her stroke. The science behind it is surprisingly simple. When blood flow to the brain becomes threatened, gravity and breathing can temporarily become powerful allies. The moment symptoms appear, the first priority is staying calm. That sounds obvious, but panic immediately works against the body. Fear causes rapid breathing, spikes stress hormones, tightens blood vessels, and can make oxygen delivery even less efficient. The brain needs calm, controlled support, not chaos. The second step is safety. Sit down immediately if you feel weak or dizzy. If possible, lie flat on your back on the floor, a couch, or a bed. Preventing a fall is critical because balance can disappear suddenly during a stroke. Then comes the important part. Elevate the legs roughly 10 to 12 inches using pillows, cushions, or anything nearby. This position helps encourage blood that normally pools in the lower body to move back toward the chest and upward toward the brain. In simple terms, you're using gravity to help circulation when oxygen delivery may already be compromised. But positioning alone is only part of it. Breathing matters just as much. Begin slow, deliberate breathing through the nose. Inhale gently for 4 seconds. Hold for 2 seconds. Then exhale slowly for 6 seconds. That rhythm is intentional. Slow breathing helps stabilize the nervous system, supports oxygen exchange, and reduces the body's panic response. Instead of fighting against your own physiology, you begin working with it. And during a stroke, maintaining oxygen delivery to vulnerable brain tissue can be incredibly important. Again, this is not a substitute for emergency treatment. The moment stroke symptoms appear, emergency services should be contacted immediately. But while help is coming, these simple actions may help support circulation and reduce additional stress on the brain during the most critical minutes. What makes this moment so powerful is not just the physical technique itself, but the sense of control it creates during absolute fear. Imagine suddenly losing the ability to speak clearly. Imagine feeling one side of your body stop responding while your mind races in panic. Most people freeze in that situation. Their breathing becomes shallow and rapid. Their heart pounds harder. Thoughts scatter, but controlled breathing changes that entire chain reaction. Slow breathing tells the nervous system that the body is still stable. It helps reduce the flood of stress hormones that can worsen blood vessel constriction. It keeps oxygen moving more efficiently. And perhaps most importantly, it helps the person stay mentally clear enough to act, to remember when symptoms started, to call for help, to stay still instead of trying to push through it. That last mistake is more common than people realize. Many stroke victims try to stand up, walk around, or test whether the symptoms will disappear. Some even attempt to continue their day normally. But movement, confusion, and delayed action can increase danger dramatically. The goal is not to prove strength. The goal is to protect the brain. And sometimes the smartest action is the simplest one. Stop moving, get horizontal, elevate the legs, breathe slowly, and wait for professional help. Modern neurological research continues to show how important those early minutes truly are. Brain cells are extremely sensitive to oxygen deprivation. Once circulation drops below critical levels, damage can begin within minutes. But the body also has natural compensatory mechanisms that may help preserve vulnerable tissue temporarily if circulation is supported early enough. That's why calm, deliberate action matters so much. And this leads into something many people find deeply hopeful. Even after a stroke occurs, the brain is far more adaptable than most of us were ever taught to believe. Damage does not always mean the end of recovery. In fact, the brain has an extraordinary ability to rebuild pathways and relearn lost functions, sometimes in ways that seem almost impossible at first. For decades, people believed that once part of the brain was damaged, recovery had strict limits. If speech was lost, it stayed lost. If balance disappeared, it never fully returned. But modern neuroscience tells a very different story. The brain is not a fixed machine. It's a living network constantly adapting and reorganizing itself. Scientists call this neuroplasticity, and it may be one of the most remarkable survival abilities the human body possesses. Imagine a major highway suddenly shutting down in a crowded city. Traffic doesn't simply stop forever. Cars begin searching for side roads, alternate routes, smaller streets that eventually become new pathways. The brain works in a surprisingly similar way. When one pathway is damaged by a stroke, other areas can sometimes learn to take over those functions through repetition, movement, and consistent stimulation. That rebuilding process often begins much earlier than people realize. The first hours and days after a stroke are important, but the weeks and months afterward can be just as critical. Gentle movement, focused breathing, mental repetition, and supportive daily habits all send signals to the brain encouraging it to reconnect and adapt. Even small actions matter. Slowly lifting a hand, practicing speech sounds, repeating basic movements every day. These may seem insignificant in the moment, but consistency creates powerful changes over time. Studies from neurological rehabilitation centers have shown that older adults who remain gently active after a stroke often recover far more function than those who become completely sedentary, and the activity doesn't need to be intense. In many cases, simple seated exercises, rhythmic movement, and controlled breathing routines can make a meaningful difference. What's encouraging is that recovery doesn't always require expensive equipment or elite facilities. The process can begin at home with patience, repetition, and persistence. The brain responds to practice. It responds to rhythm. It responds to consistent signals that say, reconnect this pathway, strengthen this function, build this route again. And over time, those signals can lead to remarkable improvements people once believed were impossible. Recovery, however, is not only about movement. What you feed the body after 60 plays a massive role in how well the brain protects and repairs itself. Blood vessels, circulation, inflammation, oxygen delivery, all of it is influenced by daily nutrition far more than most people realize. The brain depends on healthy blood flow every second of the day, and certain foods directly support that process. Omega-3 fatty acids found in foods like salmon and sardines help support blood vessel health and may reduce inflammation inside the arteries. Leafy greens and beets contain natural compounds that help blood vessels relax and widen, improving circulation. Berries provide antioxidants that help protect delicate brain tissue from oxidative stress. Even small amounts of dark chocolate have been associated with improved vascular function because of compounds that support nitric oxide production, a molecule that helps arteries stay flexible. None of these foods are magic on their own. But together, they create an internal environment where circulation works more efficiently and the brain receives more consistent oxygen delivery. Research continues to show that long-term eating patterns matter far more than quick fixes. Seniors who follow Mediterranean-style nutrition patterns rich in vegetables, fish, olive oil, nuts, and minimally processed foods consistently show lower rates of stroke recurrence and cognitive decline. And beyond food, hydration matters too. Many older adults live in a mildly dehydrated state without realizing it, especially first thing in the morning. Thicker, dehydrated blood places additional strain on circulation. Even starting the day with a simple glass of water before coffee can support healthier blood flow. But perhaps the biggest shift happens when people stop viewing health as something that only matters during a crisis. Real protection is built quietly, day after day, through routines that seem small in the moment. Gentle movement, consistent sleep, nutritious meals, stress management. These are not dramatic interventions. They are daily investments in the resilience of the brain and the flexibility of the cardiovascular system long before an emergency ever appears. One of the most overlooked factors in stroke prevention has nothing to do with medication or hospitals. It's circulation during the first hour after waking up. For many older adults, blood pressure naturally rises in the morning as the body transitions from sleep to activity. That sudden shift places extra stress on blood vessels at the exact time circulation may already be vulnerable. This is why simple morning habits can become surprisingly powerful over the long term. One of the easiest routines begins before you even stand up. Sit calmly on the edge of the bed and take 3 slow, deep breaths. Fill the lungs fully. Let the body wake gradually instead of rushing into movement. Then begin gently pumping the calves by lifting the heels and toes in a steady rhythm for about a minute. This activates a powerful muscle in the lower leg, sometimes called the body's second heart, because it helps push blood upward from the legs back toward the heart and brain. After that, slowly roll the shoulders, rotate the neck gently, and ease the body into motion instead of shocking the cardiovascular system awake. These movements may seem almost too simple to matter, but research has shown that low-intensity movement shortly after waking can improve circulation and help reduce dangerous morning blood pressure spikes. Add hydration to that routine, even just 1 glass of water before caffeine, and the body begins the day in a far more stable state. But circulation isn't influenced only by movement. Emotional stress affects blood vessels too. Chronic stress keeps the body in a constant state of tension. Blood vessels tighten. Blood pressure rises. Inflammation increases quietly over time. On the other hand, moments of calm, laughter, connection, sunlight, music, and emotional safety can have the opposite effect. They help blood vessels relax and remain flexible. And flexible arteries are exactly what the brain depends on for healthy oxygen delivery as we age. Protection doesn't come from perfection. It comes from consistency. Small daily rituals repeated over years often shape long-term brain health far more than people ever imagine. What makes all of this so important is that it changes the way we think about aging itself. Many people grow older believing decline is inevitable, that losing sharpness, balance, memory, or independence is simply part of the process. But the human brain and cardiovascular system remain adaptable far later in life than previous generations were taught to believe. The body is constantly responding to signals. Every breath, every movement, every hour of sleep, every meal sends information into that system. The question is whether those signals support resilience or slowly weaken it over time. This is why preparation matters so much. Not fear, not obsession. Preparation. Margaret survived her stroke not because she had special medical training, but because she understood how to respond instead of freezing in panic. The moment her symptoms appeared, she stopped fighting the situation and started supporting her body intelligently. She sat down immediately. She lay flat. She elevated her legs. She slowed her breathing. While her husband called emergency services, she focused on staying calm and keeping oxygen moving steadily through her body. By the time paramedics arrived, some of her speech had already begun improving. Later, doctors explained that her quick response may have helped reduce the severity of the damage. That's the real power of knowledge. It transforms helplessness into action. And when people know exactly what to do during the first critical minutes of a crisis, fear loses some of its control. The goal is not to become paranoid about strokes. The goal is to become prepared enough that if the moment ever comes, you can respond immediately instead of wasting precious minutes in confusion or denial. Because during emergencies, the body performs best when the mind already knows the plan. Calm action protects oxygen flow. Calm action protects circulation. And calm action can sometimes protect brain tissue long enough for life-saving treatment to arrive. That preparation doesn't just help the individual experiencing symptoms. It gives families confidence, clarity, and a sense of direction during one of the most frightening moments imaginable. So remember the message at the center of everything you've heard today. When the brain suddenly loses blood flow, seconds matter, but panic only makes things worse. The body needs oxygen, stability, and calm support immediately. If warning signs appear, sudden weakness, facial drooping, slurred speech, confusion, loss of balance, don't ignore them and don't wait to see if it passes. Call emergency services right away. Then focus on the simple actions that may help support circulation while help is coming. Get into a safe position. Lie flat if possible. Elevate the legs slightly. Breathe slowly and deliberately. Inhale for 4 seconds. Hold briefly, then exhale longer than you inhale. Let gravity assist circulation instead of fighting against your own body with panic and movement. And beyond emergencies, remember that the brain is being shaped every single day by ordinary habits. Movement matters. Sleep matters. Hydration matters. Emotional calm matters. Consistent routines that improve circulation and reduce stress can quietly strengthen the brain for years before any crisis ever appears. Aging does not automatically mean helplessness. It means awareness. It means learning how to work with your body instead of against it. The most powerful forms of protection are often the simplest ones repeated consistently over time. And perhaps the most important thing of all is this: share this knowledge with someone you care about. A spouse, a parent, a neighbor, a friend. Because information only becomes powerful when people remember it in the moments that matter. Practice the response mentally before you ever need it. Imagine the steps. Stay calm. Lie down. Elevate the legs. Slow the breath. Make it familiar now so the body can react clearly later. Because when emergencies happen, there is rarely time to think everything through from the beginning. There is only time to act, and preparation can make that action faster, calmer, and potentially life-saving.